Okay, ready to rock and roll.
Oh, actually, no. Hold on a second. Bum, bum. Okay, ready to rock and roll.
Okay, right, we're back and we're doing we did our 11 to 7 already, so this time we're going to do 6 to 4. And as we said, our ranking is I ranked them from 11 to 1, Shane ranked them from 11 to 1. We added them both up. One of the downsides of that ranking process means that we get a few ties. So we have a few ties here. And our 7, 6, and 5 are
Or 6, 5, and 4.
6, 5, and 4 are all tied at the same level.
So what we're going to do is for our number 6, because our 4th and 5th, both of us have a number 1 in our 4th and 5th. So as in our favorite albums are actually going to be 4th and 5th in this list. So we decided that the 6th one would be the other album that got the same score, and that is the most recent album from 2019, Office Politics. You scored it a 6. It's your 6th favorite Divine Comedy album, and it's a top 3 album for me. So it was 3 for me. So it got 9 points altogether.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
6 for me seems about right. In terms of it's not like it's there's some good moments, a lot of great creativity. Parts where I liked some growers where the first time I heard it, I said, what the hell is going on here? Songs like Philip and Steve's Removal Company, the first time I heard it, I thought he was just playing with his music editing software, and then you get a sense of, well, this is actually something interesting, and it's there's a payoff at the end. It's actually one I really quite like. It's one of these novelty songs that actually I think
Works out well.
But that's I wouldn't regard it as a highlight, but I regard it like it's very creative. Definitely, but and some other very creative moments. But 3 seems like to get to 3, you have to knock out a lot of really good albums.
Yeah, but I think it's a brilliant album. It's I think there's 16 songs in it, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 16 songs. So it's like almost like a double album, really, and it's just very, very strong considering there's so many songs on it. I think it's lyrically really good. It definitely explores themes of alienation in the modern world. You know, human beings being replaced by automation, the callousness. I think there's one song absolutely obsolete where. We know you landed. One of the lyrics is, "We know you land up on your feet now." Where it's delivered so callously, like about the alienation of the modern world, especially for someone his age, that just feels a little bit adrift in the modern world. Like that just feels like as I said, there's a song called "I'm a Stranger Here." And the lyrics are like, "I'm a stranger here, I'm a stowaway from the olden days." And I'll play a song from where I come from, if you like. It's almost he almost delivers it in a kind of a, if you like. It's not like it's not delivered in a kind of way, "Oh, things were better in my day." It's delivered in a sort of the character feeling is like a feeling of disorientation and bemusement, and just sort of just not so much bitter, but just feeling lost, if that makes sense.
Like the more sincere songs I quite like Feather in Your Cap. However, some of the jokey, well, I interpret them as jokes. I don't, like, it's one of these moments where I don't feel the joke really gets me. Like Hugh Jumper, it's I don't know, I guess it has that sort of little bit of a jaunty feel to it. Like, I get the whole type of but the corporate world that they're sort of sneaking in with, that is commenting on, and that's fine, but I don't know, it doesn't, I don't like the joke doesn't land as well as some of the others.
I wouldn't really consider it a joke. Like, it's just
well, I'm better than you and all this sort of stuff that goes on. Or
but is he not? He's actually basically criticizing these people's arrogant attitudes. It's not really that he's joking about them. He's more or less kind of, it's his way of having a dig about these people who feel entitled, and going back to the complete banker from Bangkok and Knighthood, that class of person, particularly in the financial world or in the corporate world or whatever, that has no sort of empathy for the ordinary working class person that that will jump through, has no problem finding loopholes, and doesn't have a sense of any kind of a sense of any responsibility to their community, or does that make sense? I don't know. So it's not my favorite song. I think but it's a grower. I think it is actually a grower. It's like when my brother heard that song, he was like, "Oh God, Divine Comedy, is this the road they're going down now?"
Well, I sort of felt a bit like that as well. Like I said, this is exactly what I don't like about Divine Comedy. These sort of fair point that it's more of a dig than a sort of joke. But his tongue is a little bit in cheek. It's not like he's sort of saying I'm better. Like that sort of I'm better than you sort of line is a bit. He's not really. It's not a punch in the face. It's sort of like it's a little bit of a sly dig in a sort of jokey way. I don't know, but yeah, I don't like it. Didn't do it a whole lot for me. Now, when I started listening to the album, those opening parts, I didn't. I said, "Oh, this is definitely not going to be for me at all." But then, as some of the songs went on, and you got the little electronic bits coming in, loads of different influences. You could feel like. A feather in your cap, it sort of felt like that sort of 80s synth type sound, almost like Take Your Breath Away. That sort of a feel to it. There's some other bits with the bass work reminding me of Gary Newman and that sort of 80s sort of style as well, and that was pretty cool. You can feel these things coming in different parts.
Yeah, no, like there's great. Like the thing about it, what's great about it is that it feels to me very cohesive, but there's a lot of different styles here. And like the idea of the office where I really like the song Office Politics. I think there's a really cool drum work. I think it's Tim Weller is the drummer. I think that's his name. I think he became the drummer. It used to be Migsy, in the older Divine Comedy, the Britpop era. But he became the drummer from, I think, the Bangles in the Knighthood period, or no, maybe it was Victory for Comic Muse period. And really, I think he's a very subtly creative drummer, a repulsing bass. Again, a late Divine Comedy for, I know you probably prefer the early Divine Comedy, but I think that the bass work of the late Divine Comedy is actually much more to the fore and more noticeable and more creative, and it's really pulsing bass in the song. And funny lyrics, love that line, "Does spake Zara Brewster" about, oh, look! Like, and the other thing is, remember the guy? He's got his. I should have read the lyrics out to see. There's so many. I think it's lyrically a really strong album. But for whatever reason, I actually can't remember the lyrics to that song. Although I do think they're funny.
Yeah. One song as well that didn't really land for me, but I think you might like it more than I do. Is "Opportunity Knocks." It's I don't know. It's one of these songs that I think it's just okay, and that's sort of sometimes when I hear that when I get that sort of a vibe. Opportunities, they don't come.
Actually, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
That I think for me it's probably, look, I don't know, the Synthesizer Service Center Super Summer Sale song. It's kind of
it's just a tongue twister, nearly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She sells seashells at the seashore. But it's kind of not really a song, is it? Like, I can enjoy it the same way I can enjoy pull and revolving doors from Amnesiac from Radiohead. Like, it's not really a song, but in the context of an album, you listen to it. But you'd never add it to a playlist, for example. But I'd say Opportunity Knocks is one of the more mundane, just not musically doesn't do a whole lot for me. The melody doesn't do a lot for me. But at the same time, I do think lyrically it's funny. And to bring back, there's the character. Remember, I was saying Billy Bird. Billy Bird, the character, appears in Absent Friends in the song "Come Home, Billy Bird," which is about a kind of an international business traveler. He's a guy that has to leave home a lot, leave his children a lot for business, and that song is about him coming home to see his son's football game, after being on the beer with work colleagues or whatever, and he's a hangover and everything's going wrong. But anyway, I should really be talking about that when we get to Absent Friends. He never makes an appearance as a recurring character in any of the other songs until this album. And 15 years later, in Opportunity Knocks, this guy Knox, who is kind of, I think, the recurring character here, where he's referring to in Q Jumper, which is this guy, this sort of character who's all about himself. He doesn't mind whose feet he stamps on. He just wants to get ahead at all costs, and he's kind of having a dig at this. But it gets to a preposterous level, like where, and I'd say pretty comedic, like, you know, where actually Billy Bird, he wants to take Billy Bird's up higher in the business than he is, and he wants to take his place. And it turns out he murders Billy Bird. Billy Bird has been murdered in office politics. So his son, who's probably grown up at this stage, will be devastated, I assume, and he won't be able to watch any of the football games anymore. It's just a funny touch that
it's like the Divine Comedy. Major Tom, who's in like David Bowie, makes a reappearance in Ashes to Ashes, and then it's like Major Tom's a junkie, which is yeah. So
I don't know my boy as well as you do, but I do know Major Tom. But yeah, like that's funny lyrics. I think it was something like where the guards arrest him and he's like, this is blood at sink. So what? To own a shovel isn't hard. Like but his muddy trousers. It's just fun. Like I think the funny lyrics, but it's not a great song.
And one song I did like actually was after the Lord Mayor's show. I think it's a nice way to wrap it up. One thing that I think Neil Hannon does well is sort of ebb and flow of the album and then within songs, but this is a nice moment in the album where it's like, okay, we're at the back end here now, we're wrapping it up, and it's sort of a quiet way to close it, but if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, and lyrically I think that song, I think it's beautiful melody, and it's just very heartfelt. I think it's kind of like a tribute to the people who are the cleaners, you know, after the Lord Mayor's show. That's when the real work gets done. Like I think in a lot of ways this album is a tribute to the working person who, you know, who doesn't get the credit that they deserve. You know, I think Hannon has kind of said that. But I also see it as it kind of sometimes it can work on a literal level, but also a metaphorical level, which I kind of see it as well as it relating to Norman and Norma. You know, when you're a bit younger, life kind of is, experience kind of hits you. Like, you know, you don't have to work hard for experiences. Every experiences are new and exciting, and, you know, fall in love for the first time and it's exciting. Yeah. You know, your work, even work, when you start work, is exciting for the first time. And then that's like, to me, that's like metaphorically the Lord Mayor's show. But then it's after that, after youth, that's when the real work starts. And and I that's a takeaway I get from that now you've really got to work hard, which is a theme is picked on or is also explored in Norman and Norma. It's about the couple who, you know, really struggle after, you know, raising their daughters to find meaning, I suppose, in their life, and they get it through some kind of 1066 reenactment. You know,
it's
totally bizarre. Like, but
I don't remember. I didn't get that element. I remember that reenactment thing at the end. Yeah, one thing about Norman and Norma, I know we mentioned about Lady of a Certain Age, and that's a story where I feel like, okay, really hits home. This is, I think, where storytelling, it's a bit, I don't think it's really that heartfelt. It doesn't come across that way to me. It's like a nice sort of pop song, and the story is okay, it's grand, but like, I could take it or leave it. That's the way I'd feel about it.
Yeah, like, again, like, as you know, my brother, we both know Mal, like he's a big fan of that song. My problem with the song is I think it's a lovely song, but it I don't know. It's like it's in where it placed in the track order. It's after kind of Q Jumper and Office Politics, where it starts off with a bang, and it just, I feel like it's a bit jarring to my ears to have a song just that it's just a pleasant little piano ditty that doesn't seem to fit in the order of the track listing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's no harm. Like, if things are going quickly, then to pull it back a little bit. And also, you tend, I think it's a common thing to have it the single around track 2 or 3 sometimes, or track 1 even. So I don't know. I know what you mean, though. It's like it is a bit different, all right.
So, like, what about the highlights from this album for you?
Highlights for me would be, I liked the experimentation, the sort of electronic element. It's very different to some of the other albums, which is quite interesting. In terms of songs, Feather in Your Cap is one that I quite like. I enjoyed, like, when I heard Philip and Steve, I didn't like it at all the first time around. Then when I learned more about Philip, like, I knew of Philip Glass, but then Steve Reich, and I heard about his I heard out they actually had a furniture removal company, and then I heard out that his sort of music was sort of like that sort of copy and paste type stuff, and I said, oh, that's interesting. And then, like, when I heard it first, I think, oh, he's only messing around, and then it sort of builds up, and then there's a bit of a payoff afterwards. And then when you hear it more and more, it sort of reveals itself to you, which is quite nice. And it's more instant maybe than others. So I know it's one of these album things that just fits in with the album. You wouldn't put it in a playlist or anything, but yeah, there's more to it than at face value. In terms of downsides, songs like Normal and Q Jumper just don't really do it. They're a bit. I feel like there's some. It's like that. It's not fully. The stories don't really get me on Normal, and then that sort of, as
Normal, for example, the story from the lady of a certain age rings true to you, but Normal doesn't ring true.
Yeah, but you can sort of see, okay, this is something that's a real. Yeah, it rings more true. Yeah, exactly. Like it's a more of a story that you can think about. It gets you thinking about something. You're thinking about it afterwards, and you say, oh, I wonder. You might relate it to somebody that you know, or you might relate it to some sort of experiences, and you might think about your own life in that context. Whereas with Normal and Norma, like, I had no. Maybe it's to do with the fact that it's more sort of a poppy, uplifting, or not really uplifting, but a sort of a radio-friendly pop song, not necessarily a sad, melancholic song. But yeah, that's
right. Yeah. So, for me, highlights. Look, I think there's loads of highlights. I think it's one of those albums where it's hard to find, like, just, you know, I'm not going to say that there's many all-time great Divine Comedy songs in it. It's just full of, you know, really great songs. You know, you won't have too many epics like of Our Mutual Friend variety, you know, or which they are known for. Like, but I think Office Politics, the song itself, absolutely obsolete. Infernal Machines has kind of a musy kind of bass line to it. I two of my favorites would be You'll Never Work in This Town Again. Like, this is almost like you know, a spaghetti western sort of sound to the there's a mandolin, and I think it's pretty cool, you know, that it's quite retro, and then I like the Psychological Evaluation song, which is, you know, that has a bit of a Daft Punk feel to it. And I think that is one of his most humorous songs, where he's quite self-deprecating, you know, where the machine is asking him questions about himself, you know. I think there's one that talks about mood. You asked me that already. I'm fine. You know. Yeah. So I look at you need to hear it. You know.
No, I know. Yeah, I like that one. I know there is that. It starts off with, you know, his dialogue with the computer, and yeah, there's sort of, it's like that sort of guitar, like Random Access Memories type Daft Punk.
Yes. So, yeah. Life and Soul of the Party got Nile Rodgers vibe, you know. It's about as funky as you're ever going to get from Divine Comedy. And so look, I don't go to the Divine Comedy for funk, but I still think that's a crack and track. Like yourself, I agree with you. Feather in Your Cap. Yeah, it almost has a kind of it's like a slow spandau ballet song, but I think really, really nice lyrics, and it's strange to hear them coming from a man. I find it hard, because normally, you know, it's kind of this idea that
a man taking advantage, sure.
That yeah. Well, that's the perception. That's my own stereotypical thinking, that it's usually where you know, he's singing, but that it's to me, you're just a kind of another name to add to your list of lovers. She's saying, like, he's singing to the woman in the song. You know, I'm a footnote in your memoir, a holiday snap at the bottom of your drawer. This idea of, when you have a feeling for somebody, but not, and you get with them, but they've actually just used you, you know, kind of like, and it's quite a heartfelt song about the person trying to come to terms with that, and just kind of, you know, even saying that, but I hope you don't mind if I don't pretend when we meet again. And like, I think it's the idea is that she's thinking about this interaction between the two when they got together was at the office party. and then obviously the other person's it has showed no interest since then, but they still have this. They're still going to have awkward interactions at work. So it's like, I hope you don't mind if we meet each other again. And now this, I'm paraphrasing the lyrics, that I don't pretend to be okay, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you can just walk away. It's just really nice. I'm gonna rush through them. Dark Days Are Here Again. Kind of one of the more rockier songs, I suppose. I think it's a cracking song. Really, I love the drums in it. I think it sort of refers to kind of 2016 Trump. A lot of these songs were written actually during the era of Foreverland. 2016, where the rise of Trumpism, Brexit, the rise of more far right politics. But maybe the highlight of all the songs is When the Working Day Is Done. Just a really lyrically fantastic song about, I suppose, kind of when the working day is done, not really feeling a sense of fulfillment, I suppose, and kind of the person just going home, sees, and the movie poster screams, "It's the best you've ever seen, but it's all a different world to which you've never been." To which you've never been, and you try to keep yourself amused by reading the Financial Times of the fellow next to you. It's just sort of again sort of alludes to the alienation of the character, and I think certainly the alienation of the modern age, and also maybe the lack of, I suppose, fulfillment people are getting from their work or even outside.
One thing that's interesting, and I hope I'm thinking about the right song, but the style of a lot of his songs, they can, like, he draws on it sounds like it fits really well in a musical, basically, and I think that one is one where just the general melody is very different to what you normally hear in a pop song. Like, it really has those sort of influences.
Yeah, well, I think it sounds like a pretty complicated chord progression, and that when he does that, I prefer those than these kind of familiar kind of
just simple pop
songs. Simple chord progressions where I'm like, oh, I kind of heard this melody before, which I luckily there's more of this. He produces more of these type of melodies himself, but then those ones, I think, anyway. So yeah, we have it at number 6, but it's actually tied for our 4th and 5th. Well, I place it very highly amongst your discography, and I think you rate it fairly highly as well. It's kind of
I suppose
high in the middle.
Yeah, high middle. Yeah, definitely. So that was number 6. Number 5 and number 4 are tied. We have Regeneration and Promenade. So Regeneration is my number 1, and Shane's number 8. And then Promenade is Shane's number 1 and my number 8. So this is a head-to-head battle.
Talk about a dramatic discrepancy there. In views. Now,
I think it reflects the fact that I'm new to Divine Comedy and you're the hardcore fan, because Regeneration, I think, is the more accessible album, and it's one when I heard it. I remember when I was listening through all the albums, and I came to Regeneration and said, okay, right now this is my type of thing. And I really enjoyed it the first time I listened to it. And as I listened to it a bit more, it sort of, I'd say if we came back in a month's time, I might have changed my ranking, and it might be 1 or 2 passing it out. And I feel like, but at the moment, I'd still put it at number 1. But Promenade, and maybe this is the question for the hardcore fan, is, to me, Promenade, it feels like it's unfinished. It feels like he's getting there. He's on the trajectory, but I feel like he's not quite there yet. But for hardcore fans, it seems to be very popular. So I wonder why that is.
That's interesting. Like, can you elaborate on why you think or is it hard to put your finger on it? Like, why you think it's
so there's some songs that I really like. So the likes of the book, I think it really encapsulates how I felt about the album. So the Book Lovers, the first time I heard it, I thought, oh, this is grand. It's fine. Like, I see what he's doing here. He's naming all the different authors and everything. That's fine. Like, it's okay, but it was just a song that I wasn't really that interested in. The second time I came around to listen to it, what really caught me was it was more the contrast. So you have you're just speaking the words, and then the lyrics come in, and it's and the nice melody, and the melody really works really well because you're hearing it after you're hearing this monotony, and then it lifts it, and then it comes back in, and that contrast works really well. I think that's sometimes he does that well, and also the lyrics are good in the chorus, and it's one of the moments where he has these sort of complex lyrics, but fits the melody quite well. There's another song that I can't think of right now that he tries that with. It might be somewhere else. We'll come across it.
What's the topic of it? Or what?
I can't even remember now. It'll come to me later
Don't
on.
Look Down.
No, I can't remember. But anyway, I remember hearing. I think, yeah, I know what he's doing, but it doesn't quite hit it. Whereas here, I think he does. Like it fits nicely. Like it's very hard. It's very easy to get that wrong. Like you have this really long, complex lyric that's convoluted, and you probably wrote it without thinking about the melody, and then you have a melody, and you're trying to fit the two together, and it doesn't always work. Whereas I think it works in this case. Now maybe he did have both in mind when he was writing it, but that's sort of the way it feels.
So it's fair to say we're going to talk about you've managed to sneak Promenade in at number 5 there. I've noticed.
Well, 5 or 4, like both. Okay, they're both fourth. It's a joint fourth.
All right. Okay. Yeah, joint fourth. Okay. So we'll go with Promenade to start with.
We'll talk.
Regeneration.
But we're not. It's not. Doesn't mean that it's.
Doesn't mean that it's better. Yeah. Like you prefer Regeneration. I prefer Promenade. I think they're both great albums. I think Promenade's a masterpiece. But I can kind of see, even though it's my number one, I can possibly kind of see where you're coming from regarding it doesn't quite feel, you feel like he hasn't quite found his feet in terms of maybe kind of the production. I think sometimes, like for example, the production, if the vocals aren't as, you almost feel like he's singing from a bit far away. The vocals could be a bit clearer. Like, you hear it in an album like Absent Friends, his vocal, that's when he's probably at his most accomplished vocally, where it's just so, it's so clear in the mix.
Yeah,
and while in Promenade, it doesn't seem as clear. And even there's times where, even in the book lovers, there's little kind of jokes in between. He names the authors and stuff. So you're not always like maybe it's to do with the quality of earphones I have, but it's not always easy to make out what he's saying. Like, so there are things I think like criticisms you could level at it. I also kind of think as well. Neil was playing the bass and doing a lot of the other instruments where the bass work isn't particularly interesting in Promenade, and I'm leveling all these criticisms at it, and yet I'm still having my number one, just on the basis of the quality of the songs, and it is very creative. You can tell the Michael Nyman influence in the music as well, like regarding the how he kind of brings together the cello and the violin and arranges the kind of compositions around the kind of the songs and the main melody. But I just think that first of all, I do like. I just think it sounds very unique. It sounds very different. Like I'd say even would have sounded even more different back then. I love the concept of the album where it's basically about two young lovers, where each song, the first song, Bat, talks about her. They're getting ready to go on a date together. Her taking a bath, and just the image, like it's just the image of at the start. It's all that you can hear the waves of the sea and all that, and then that's juxtaposition between that and it's the beat kicks in. He goes rubber dub, so like and then going downhill fast. The male character cycling down the hill with butterflies in his stomach, and then they meet at the library in the book lovers, which I think is just a really great, just beautiful music, Geronimo, really great short song, piano song, where the two lovers, after leaving the seafood restaurant from a seafood song, go out into the rain and they don't care, and it's sort of, it just captures that whole kind of feeling of young love, I suppose. Then, but Don't Look Down, we'll talk about a wonderful song, one of the Divine Comedy's greatest songs, which starts off with them just going, the two of them, him being reluctant to go onto a Ferris wheel with her at the what do you call that? The fair, or whatever, the carnival, or whatever that he went to, and he's up in the wheel, and the couple from down below, I suppose, or from up above, I suppose they think we're in love. I think we might be right, and then I think they might be right. He says the couple from up above, I suppose they think we're in love. I think they might be right, and then at that very moment,
it's kind of like brings me back to your daddy's car. Is that kind of ecstasy? Something always just intervenes and doesn't allow him to feel the full ecstasy, or the character the full ecstasy, and then he has this big argument with God. Like it's a really epic kind of rant. Now this is pre kind of he would have been very young, he'd been in his early 20s, but this was pre kind of the new atheism of like the Sam Harris and the Richard Dawkins and the Christopher Hitchens, and some of the rant, and I don't think their argument, they're very, very sophisticated defenders of atheism myself. Anyway, like that's another thing. We're not going to get into it. It's a music it's a music podcast, but
touched on politics and religion.
Yeah. But apologies. But just brilliant, kind of some brilliant lyrics where I'd rather use my pain than let it go to waste than something like them wasted on a God who tells me what I want to hear as if I can't tell the difference between obedience and fear. Like just great ones. And even just towards the end where, and then God, it almost reminds me of the Book of Job. Kind of like the God character in this story is just kind of, once again, he's quite petty and very egocentric, and like, you know, he doesn't like to be challenged.
The way you slip in the Book of Job there, as if everybody knows about the Book of Job.
Book of Job, come on. We all know about the Book of Job.
It's like, it reminds me of
But you know the Job, the
I know
book.
what you mean. Yeah.
Shall I go into the Book of Job? Probably not. We'll be here all day. All right, never mind. But yeah, like it's. I just think it's, and the music is swirling around and building up, and again he brings it to a climax. When the lights go out, all over music, just very melodically beautiful song. The Summer House, really again, Hannon doing nostalgia. Hannon is brilliant at evoking nostalgia, and just that's
one thing about me about the Summer House. I know this was one you highlighted to me as being one of your favorites, but I can see, so I find it a little bit monotonous. However, when I listen to it, I feel like it could be, if there was this emotional punch at the end, it could be very effective. But I don't feel that emotional punch.
You don't feel the emotional punch at the end. I think if there's a flaw to that song, it just kind of has a very underwhelming beginning. But I think at the end, I think with the oboe solo on it's kind of weird to be back here again. When he goes into that again, I was totally out of tune there, but don't let that be what you would expect from that. I think when he goes into that and then I think when his vocal soars towards the end, I think that's a really powerful climax, and that does hit me hard. And if it doesn't hit you hard, fair enough.
But is it that it hits you hard in the context of the concept of the album, and this is where the story is at the moment, or is it something that is it like an emotional punch for you? Because I don't relate to it at all. But I was wondering if I was more familiar with the flow of the story of the album, maybe then it's a peak in the album.
Well, I would have heard the song like you before I would have heard the album. Like my introduction to Divine Comedy would have been through Greatest Hits or the best, the Secret History. So it did hit me before then. Like, but definitely, you know, in the context of the album, it's in, you know, the impact of it is definitely enhanced, I suppose. You know.
Yeah.
And so Neptune's Daughter is another beautifully arranged tune, which is kind of built on a sort of a descending piano line, and again just the second half of the album where it kind of, a lot of the songs become a little bit more fantastical. Like at the first, you know, fantastical, and it's almost the theme that is explored is that how he's beginning to deify the woman, and she's kind of Neptune's daughter, and she's out in the sea. And then also, like, when you're in love, you become this kind of god yourself. It's like that. I don't want to bring up the Ernest Becker. I'm bringing up another reference, but it does remind me of Ernest Becker's kind of notion of how people we deny death and we create immortality. And one of the ways we do it is through art, through spirituality, and another is through being in love. And that moment of being in love, you kind of you deify your lover and you become gods together until you can't anymore. And in that song, he he's the guy that goes there. She's kind of she's a god of the sea, and the sea creatures are trying to pull her back into the sea, and he goes out and he saves her or whatever. That's my take of it. But beautiful song, and I'll finish off on because I'm obviously it's my favorite album, so I'm going to talk about it a lot. Tonight We Fly, 10 Seconds to Midnight, and another beautiful song. And Tonight We Fly is kind of a divine comedy classic. Again, not crazy about the production, but the song itself, just I kind of love these kind of fantastical songs where it's like, tonight we fly over the houses, the streets, and the sea, or over the dogs down below who bark at our shadow. Just really, I don't know. There's something about those lyrics that the imagery that he creates that just connects with me.
Yeah, no, it is very clear. That's one of the songs I would have been familiar with before we started this, and it's like musically, it's good. Like it's full of energy, and it's great with the wrap things up in the album.
It's got the whole classic divine comedy drum beat as well. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, and apparently, I was reading an interview and he said like it's great. It's a great moment when you know what song you're going to finish your set with. And I think this is one he commonly finishes the set with, which just sounds like it fits well. But the music is good. But every time you're like, it does conjure up images, and the image in my head is like the snowman of people flying over houses and everything.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But so it is effective in that sense, but it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't do anything for me. So I sort of feel like, yeah, grand, that's okay.
Do you not ever have dreams? Like, do you not ever have that recurrent dream? I have this recurrent dream all the time that I can fly. It's kind of about, it's sort of just for a moment in time, this song, and I know there's other theories that it's about a metaphor for sex, but there's this theory where in a moment in time we're sort of transcending our human limitations, and we're beating our human limitations, and that you can fly. It's like you're not sort of what's the word? You're not bound by nature. You're tonight we fly in this moment, and about that's what love can make you feel, I suppose. Not that I'm an expert on love by any means.
But that's like in that context, it makes more sense. Like if I have more of a connection to it than if it's just about flying. If I'm taking it literally, which maybe I shouldn't have been taking it so literally, but yeah, like
I think it works literally and metaphorically. Like,
yeah,
you don't relate to it. So you that means that I'm more neurotic and I'm more upset and frustrated with my human condition, and you're just saying, yeah, well, I'm human. I don't have to fly. I don't need any of that sort of.
Well, I maybe I'm just more aware of that I'll never be able to fly.
I'm aware of it. That's the problem. But all right, fair enough. But before we move on from it, like, have you highlights?
Highlights. Don't Look Down is another one I really enjoyed as well. And it builds up to crescendo, and it's a great. Like, it's great. Like, another thing as well, like the ebb and flow in this album is really good, and that the songs lead into each other quite well. It's like when there's that stop or build up, and then just all of a sudden a stop and Don't Look Down. And then it comes into When the Lights Go Out. It's quite good. And also from leading into Tonight We Fly, it's a nice sort of transition there as well. Like these sort of little things.
From the 10 Seconds to Midnight, yeah,
I
agree, yeah.
Like, it's a nice, like it just works well together. Little things like that are really good. The Book Lovers is one really grew on me. At the start I didn't like it, but it really grew on me. So those, that's like, I like those elements of the album, and I think if I was more familiar with it as time went on, I probably would go up the ranking a bit more, but it's still not as high as the others, on my list,
Yeah. I'm not going to say much more because I've went through all the songs already, but I suppose the only thing I will say is that probably out of all the albums, I think the flow from one song to the next is better than in every other album I know. I think there's a great sort of flow to the album, and I really like albums that have that sort of cohesiveness and
works well as a unit.
We're an album that works well as a unit. Like, you could have albums that have 10 cracking songs, but they don't quite fit each other. It's probably the reason, like, the songs on Victory for Comic Muse are so strong, but in some ways they don't quite fit as well as a unit as. And by the way, just to say one thing about the album, there's some brilliant B-sides on Victory for the Comic Muse. Long Slow Suicide is one of my favorite Divine Comedy songs. Guantanamo, Don't Blame the Young, Births, Deaths and Marriages. Just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just one thing, before I finish up. Probably another reason why it's number 8 for me is that it does work well as a whole, and there are some songs that I really like, but I think the high points aren't quite as high maybe as the other albums. Like When the Lights Go Out over Europe, it's good, but it just doesn't get there for me compared to some of the other ones that are sort of higher on the list.
Yeah, okay. Look, I'm not going to scold you for your lack of good taste. Fair enough. I know what you're joking. I definitely get it. And when I the other thing I would say about the number, for me between 1 to 8, 1 to 9, there's not huge difference in qualities. It's not like I'm putting Promenade on a pedestal, way above, and even the number 2, number 3. I think there's times when they are all very interchangeable. Say if we did Radiohead, I very much have 3 albums that are a good bit ahead of the others, even though the others are strong. But with Divine Comedy, there's 5 or 6 where at different times they're quite all interchangeable. So that's an important point to make as well.
Okay, so that was we're joint 4 too. The first, that was Promenade. Next one is Regeneration, and this is my number 1 and your number 8. I think this is reflective, as you were saying, of me being more of a I suppose newcomer, and this is instantly something that resonated with me. So as it's more guitar based. I'm more of a rock fan, I suppose, in general. So this sort of album really, resonated straight out the bat. Had that sort of feel, like a Radiohead type feel. Like, of course, Nigel Godrich is the producer, so it has that sort of Radiohead influence. Very much feels very different to the other albums. It's more of a guitar album as opposed to maybe, like, there is, from my hearing anyway, there is that what do you call it? The sort of orchestral work, but it's more of orchestral work to back up the guitars. The guitars are the main event really when it comes to providing accompaniment for the songs. And that really, got there for me. It does feel like an outlier. It also feels like he's not really being himself. It's like he's it feels like he's settling out a little bit. Like he's trying to be a guitar band when that's not really what comes from naturally. I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's funny you should say that, because it's funny because in a lot of the songs, if you talk about the beauty regime, it's like, don't be a slave to the beauty regime. Look in the mirror and see how exactly beautiful you are. He's kind of he's telling everybody, and I think it's a little bit of that in Mastermind as well. And some of the other songs is where he's kind of saying, be yourself, where it's almost like he was actually, he is a big fan of the OK Computer, but when he was, he listened to OK Computer back in '97, and he went on to make Fin de Siècle, which is obviously very, very different now. This is it is a little bit more Radiohead sounding, in so much as that it's quite glum, I suppose, and it is guitar driven, and I suppose some of the kind of the harmonic guitar work can resemble some of the Radiohead's harmonic guitar work, but yeah, I think this, for me, what you have at number 1, I think it's a great album. I think it's a great album, and there's been times when it's been right up there, close to the top for me as well. I think one of the flaws of it, I would say, is probably the homogeneity. Is that there really isn't enough for variety, and I know you want an album that is that works well as a cohesive unit. But by the time you get to maybe Regeneration or the Beauty Regime, there really just isn't enough variety. It's almost seems very much one-toned, and each song individually is quite strong. Yeah. But that one tone kind of gets a little bit tiring. Even though, like, a song like Regeneration, I think is an very underrated song. It's a great song. Beauty Regime, I think, is a lovely song, but you just get a little bit tired by the time those songs come. I've actually listened to it from. I skipped the first string, and I listened to it from in preparation for this this podcast, from note to self, starting from note to self, and I really enjoyed it from note to self to Regeneration or to the Beauty Regime. But for some reason, when you start from all the way from Time Stretch, it feels
like it's a lot of the same. from there.
Yeah, and like Hannon himself, and like I remember that he made a video of 30 years of Divine Comedy. It's actually well worth checking out on YouTube, where he just kind of briefly kind of talks about all the albums and his own discography. And he said himself he wasn't that as personally connected to it now, and it's funny because he joined Parlophone. And I think that, he was worried. Like he read a review of Secret History, and he was determined not to go down with the Britpop ship, which was definitely at that stage was well and truly sinking. And he kind of, I think you've told me before that you've kind of, sometimes he has a lot of jokey songs, and that does he not want to be taken seriously. And I think he read a few reviews that kind of described the Divine Comedy as just being a sort of a eccentric peculiarity, and that they'll that's all they'll ever be. And he was like, no, I want to have mass appeal. I want to appeal to the masses, and I want longevity, and which he has achieved, in fairness to him. But that's what he was thinking, and maybe, as you say, that.
He jumped on the Radiohead bandwagon.
He kind of did jump on the Radiohead bandwagon, but he got away with it. I think the only reason he got away with it is because it's such a strong album, because the songs are strong, as you say. Like that's probably why you have it number one. Like they are very, very strong albums, and who's to say that he didn't feel that way at the time? He also complained about the album where he felt like, this is very whiny, it's very moany. I
like
really
that
me.
edge though. Like what I do like when I do like Divine Comedy, it's where there is a bit of a bite to some of the things that are going on, and there is that in Regeneration. I find it's not all lovey-dovey. Although Perfect Love Song is one song I don't really like on it, because I do find it a bit too sweet, saccharine sort of feel to it. But
so cynical.
Yeah. Well, like it's the opposite to when we're talking about Down in the Street Below. Like that's a bit sweet, but it's nice. It's like show don't tell in a way. It's like he's showing the scenario, and then you can relate to the scenario, and then you can feel the feelings through that. Whereas Perfect Love Song just feels like it's a bit more. I don't know.
I think he was going for a Beach Boys vibe in it. I think it's it's a perfectly good love song.
It's funny, when you said like I do get reminded of different things in different songs. Like so, the likes of Bad Ambassador, when the guitar intro there, it's straight out of a Radiohead album. That sort of the effect, that sort of flanger effect or whatever it is that's on the guitar. You hear that in a Radiohead song. It's like the sort of tone and sort of mood that's created is also very similar to Radiohead. The other song that I like, I know Dumb It Down is one that you highlighted, but I don't like it as much. It doesn't do much for me. I do like Mastermind a lot. And interesting about Mastermind sort of reminded me, I was listening to it, and it's the melody there reminds you of something. I can try and put my finger on what the melody was. And I think it's like Behind Blue Eyes by The Who, or some song where the melody is quite similar. So, but I'm not saying he's plagiarizing or anything. But there are a few bits and pieces like that come through. One of my other favourite songs, Note to Self, I really like, and I like the way it's sort of, it's a sort of a rocky type of, it has a sort of indie rockish feel, but it's not, I suppose it's not all out rock. But then at the end it really sort of kicks it up a notch, it gets sort of heavy, which sort of appealed to me, my rock sensibilities, I suppose. Eye of the Needle, one nice thing with Eye of the Needle that I enjoy. I enjoy the theme of it. It's something I can definitely relate to, like growing up, going to church as a young fella. You can picture all the moments that are talked about, and sort of the way he questions religion and stuff like that. That's really well described. And again, it's show don't tell. He presents he paints the picture very well. But one thing I like musically is like that sort of repeated figure, that sort of ostinato to give it where you have it's like in what do you call it? The Verve, Bittersweet Symphony. You have the same thing going through the whole time, but then it changes. Then you have the chords underneath it sort of changing slightly. They give it that bit of, and then you have little things coming in.
What's that instrument? Where is it like a horn that comes in?
He has an oboe. He uses the oboe a lot.
I saw oboe. Yeah, of course.
I don't know if he used the oboe. The oboe. That's one thing I love about Divine Comedy songs at the Opo, especially in A Mutual Friend. But he uses that. That's such a lovely sound. But he has this sort of same repeated figure throughout, and that can get really boring. But it's used really well, like, because it sort of paints the picture of the monotony of the church and mass and all that sort of stuff that goes with it. But then he changes it ever so slightly, just enough to be interesting, which is really well
like
done.
I think it's one of those songs where the one tone that it's a very one note tone, not one note tone, but like his singing is very much, there's not much light and shade, monotonous tone of the singing kind of works for that song. And there's the great lyrics in that song as well, where all the cars in the churchyard all shiny in German, it's distinctly at odds with the theme of the sermon. I stare at the people queuing for communion, squeezing themselves through the eye of the needle. There are some great lyrics there. And look, I'm a little bit critical. Some of the lyrics are a bit on the nose. Like I do think I'm not crazy about Dumb and Down. I enjoy it musically, but ironically, it's kind of it's probably the most on the nose lyrics, dumbed down lyrics. When he's complaining about a dumbed down society, like he's making his point in the most dumbed down way possible. Like, but well, maybe that's a bit harsh, but like you, I think Mastermind is a cracking Radiohead song, really beautiful acoustic number which is, as you say, the strings aren't exactly the star of the show like they are on many of the Divine Comedy songs, but they're used perfectly in that song to build it up and to enhance the sound of it. And like you say, Bad Ambassador is one of probably their best kind of pop rocky songs. Lost Property actually is maybe a highlight for me as well. Like I think it's kind of like a sister to Neptune's Daughter. Like I think it's
There's one.
Beautiful piano line, just really well produced. Really, I love the bass. I think sometimes you can tell that they've been influenced a little bit by Radiohead. That's where the bass in that song, in Lost Property, reminds me a little bit of Airbag from OK Computer. But anyway, what were you saying?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I don't know which song it is now, but one thing that came to mind, I remember...
Lost Property? I'll remind you. Where it's...
No, sorry, there's a bit where he does like... this falsetto, and it sort of reminded me a bit of U2 in parts, like the sort of early 90s U2, where there's a lot of falsetto coming in. But there's one song, I think it might have been I don't know, some falsetto Mastermind. No, I can't remember now.
What the hell is normal, and who the hell is sing? No, couldn't be.
No,
that's probably. Is it Regeneration? The song.
Yeah, maybe. No, I can't remember. But anyway,
probably the most entertaining 5 seconds of the podcast, guys. You're welcome.
Okay, I don't know if there's anything else to say on Regeneration.
I don't think so. I just think it's a quality album. It's and I like there's times I just found myself. There's other albums I like, maybe at the moment I like it better, but I have, and as I say, I have listened to it from 1 to 11. If you're in the right mood for it, it's just, and even I think Neil Hannon said there's a Divine Comedy album for everybody. And if you're not quite into if you feel like, I've heard National Express, I've heard Everybody Knows, that's not really for me. Well, if you like bands like Radiohead, if you like bands like, I don't know, who else would you compare it to?
Yeah, guitar, sort of guitar indie rock, like late 90s, like it is sort of its moment. It is sort of late 90s, early 90s guitar rock.
I suppose but I'd rate it higher than, say, Parachutes by Coldplay.
Yeah.
I think it's.
And one thing I always think, like, this is when people say to me about Leonard Cohen, Leonard Cohen is a poet. I think, well, he's not a great singer, but if you compare him to other singers, and he's not a great poet if you compare to other poets, so he's somewhere in the middle. And like Divine Comedy doing Radiohead, like he's not doing Radiohead as good as Radiohead, so maybe he's better off doing his own thing. Like this.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because he's not like. Clearly, it's a little bit influenced by Radiohead. You have Nigel Godrich, the Radiohead producer, but he's not really doing Radiohead. I won't go as far as say that It's not like he's consciously sold out. I do think there's still what Radiohead song sounds like Perfect Love Song. And I don't even think there's a Radiohead song that sounds like Bad Ambassador. Maybe in the Bends, But there's a lot of like, there's no radio, you know. I don't really, I think
Radiohead,
Neil, I don't think it's that Radiohead. It's a little bit, but it's definitely not pure plagiaristic. Like it's,
I think
if there is still, it's still the Divine Comedy. It's just them going in a new direction.
One question I would,
influenced by Radiohead,
one like more so a reflection on Radiohead. Like I wonder what sort of influence Nigel Godrich has on their sound, because it does sound like that. Just the general vibe of it it feels like this sort of industrial, I don't know, darker feel to it that sort of permeates through the Radiohead albums. I wonder, has he had some influence on that? I don't know, but
I would say absolutely yes.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have to.
if he's bringing that to the table, well then you'd wonder what would they have done? Radiohead have done without him, but.
Sure. They would have sank with the Britpop ship. Hardly. No, really brilliant. So that's 6-4. We are going to come back to you with our top 3 Divine Comedy albums in just a moment.
Okay.